Welcome to Angela Wayne Show, Episode 8. Angela Wayne Show is a channel to bring real estate investors and the business owners together to share all the successes and the lessons learned. If you would like to be interviewed on this channel, please click the links in the channel description. You can email, text, Facebook message, or Instagram message me. This channel is also to help you build a network. So please say hello to each other and type your contact info in the chat. Throughout the interview, please feel free to type your question in the chat and I will select some questions onto the stage. On this special day, which is Memorial Day weekend, we have a very special guest. He is recently featured on Business Insider and has received a lot of inquiries. So I decided to bring him on the stage, even though most of you are on vacation, to get all your questions answered. So now let's welcome Kent He.
Hey, what's up, Angela? How you doing? I'm so excited to be here. I'm so glad it's episode number 8, by the way, because it's like my lucky number as well in my custom. So I'm super pumped to be on your show, and I can't wait to get the show started. I just want to bring as much value to your audience as much as possible, and yeah, super excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm really impressed. The moment I ask you, they say, let's do it, even though it's a weekend. So maybe that's also why you are so successful. Always real estate, always focus.
Yeah, I've heard from people that you got to take all the calls, right? Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we have to say no, but I think if we can say yes more than no, sometimes we get to meet people. And I still remember the day I met you, Angela, where uh, I don't think intimidated was the right word, but I knew your background and your education level and how what you bring to the community, and I was like, wow, what can I do to bring value to Angela? And I knew you had such a big data background, so that's why we kind of dove right in. And I shared with you this is how I analyze Airbnbs, and surprisingly, you were impressed. I was like, "Wow, Angela is one of the smartest people I know in the world," and you were impressed. And I think it just stemmed from the fact, like, hey, my sincere goal was to always just help people, bring value to people, not trying to make it transactional and not trying to get anything out of it. So I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really happy to see where our relations have come so far.
Yeah, that's impressive. You are definitely the go-getter and the go-giver at the same time. So you're go-getter for the success and the go-giver for everybody in the community and even outside of the community. It's really impressive.
Thank
So
you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
so you are featured on Business Insider yesterday, and then there are so many people inquire said, "Wow, that's awesome, that's amazing," and the people want to know about you. So I think today will be a good time to get all the questions answered. The people so can people understand why in such a short period of time you get that kind of success. So can tell us about this.
Yeah, maybe I'll give a little bit of background. I'll give a quick crash course on my life. I One of my favorite jobs, I always tell people, I used to be an EMT. I used to help and answer 911 calls for about 5 years of my life. When I was a senior in high school, I took EMT classes throughout college, and my first full year of working professionally as a full-time job and W-2 job, I was also still doing an EMT job. One of my favorite jobs ever, but I was only making about 12 bucks. When I finished the job, I was making $15 an hour. I knew that wasn't a job that was sustainable. So eventually I moved on. I did some management consulting. I primarily did a lot of mergers and acquisitions work. How do I combine one company with another? There was a lot of traveling with that job. So eventually it wasn't the right fit, and I had a family member, cousin-in-law, who was running a restaurant. They were losing about $20,000 or $30,000 of cash flow a month, and I decided to kind of jump in there and help him out because he was going to sponsor me to open a bakery. So it's just family. Long story short, we turned that restaurant around. I've never ran a restaurant before, but we got it back to break even, and I finally decided to go back to corporate because I had a lot of liquidity tied up in the restaurant. And my wife was working 9 to 5 and I was working 5 to 1. It just didn't make sense anymore. We weren't seeing each other. And to be honest with you, and to be completely frank, I didn't make any money on that restaurant endeavor.
Uh-huh.
But what I took away from that was, hey, if I can turn around a restaurant where 90, 95, I don't even know what the number is anymore, of restaurants actually fail, and I got it back to a place where my family didn't have to declare bankruptcy, I thought that was really good. And I think the lesson I learned there, and I think your listeners can take away from that, is if you are thinking about making a jump towards real estate or whatever entrepreneurial route you want to go about, start doing hard things now so you can condition your brain to remind yourself, hey, I can do this. I've done all this hard work. I can done all this accolades, because everybody is going to have fear in their lives. And the only way you can overcome that fear is by looking backwards and proving to yourself, I'm capable. I used to be an EMT. I did consulting work with C-suites for multi-billion-dollar companies. I turn around a restaurant. I think those are going to be the really cool things that we can remind ourselves and take it forward. And I think that's a lesson I really want to kind of emphasize for your audience today. So after the restaurant, we went to corporate. I worked in the data science world, where I was primarily helping a startup agency within an insurance company, built it out technology team, do a big data cleanup with a large team. And we got that business to basically 10x in revenue as a very large group over 4 years. Long story short, during COVID, the silver lining was I read a lot of books about real estate, and I knew that that was the path I was going to take. And I kind of stumbled into short-term rentals because I knew when I was first looking at real estate, I was thinking about buying turnkey rentals where you might cash for like $200 to $300 max per single family home. And I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, and that wasn't going to accelerate my path quick enough for me to actually leave that world so that I can pursue my own thing. My goal was to never retire and just lay on a beach and do nothing. I just needed something to cover my expenses as quickly as possible so I can go and pursue what I was interested in. And that was affordable housing. At the end of the day. So that's kind of like my story in a nutshell. I'm sorry I went on a little tangent there, but I think I covered everything that, that's pretty important for the listeners to know today.
Wow, that's a lot of golden nugget here we learned. First, start with something hard. So as an EMT, it's a lot of emotional drain. With the restaurant business, it's a lot of physical drain. So really pretty condition yourself, get out of the comfort zone, take on the hard work to learn the business.
Yeah, I think the EMT job really gave me a great story to tell in all my interviews. I think eventually when I told people, I don't really freak out. I don't really get nervous, because when I used to get called for 911 calls, I had to be the most calm person in the room. So it helped a lot when I was managing folks in consulting and all my other jobs. And I said, hey, no one's dying right now. And I think that gave people a lot of perspective in life to think about, hey, why am I really freaking out about this? And does freaking out actually contribute to solving the problem? And it never does. So again, my EMT job was that was my favorite job. And I think that's where I came to the realization that I was addicted to helping people. And I think that's why I really resonate with some of the people I meet nowadays. Like, everybody are just such go-givers, and the people that are willing to give without any expectation of return, those are the people that I really get attracted to. And that's why I'm talking to you today, Angela. It's simply because I know that you are so willing to give and give advice and help other people that I said, hey, Angela wants me on the show tomorrow. No problem. I'll get on. And boom, I'm here, right? And I think all I want to do is just give as much value to your listeners as much as possible today, because it's not about me. It's about what I can do for you.
Yeah, really, really impressive. I still remember our first contact, you showed me your data about your Airbnb. I was blown away. My background was, I have a statistic background. I was a statistician for 4 years, and I've been teaching statistics, but I was so impressed with your data. So that probably leads about half of your success to where you are, just by utilizing the 2 Airbnbs.
Yeah, the crazy part about this is, Angela, I only went that deep into the data because I was so scared. I was so scared of losing money. And I think that's why maybe there was a lot of over analytical people here, like analysis paralysis is the term we commonly think about, right? In real estate, when you're starting out, it's like, hey, what can go wrong? What can go wrong? What can go wrong? So the only way that I kept coming up with things like, hey, what if this goes wrong? Okay, let me look for the data that supports this investment thesis that says, hey, yeah, it can all go downhill, but based off of the data and what I've seen, you have to look towards the upside and the downside. And that's why our portfolio strategy is diversifying kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. We have bachelorette Airbnbs, high cash flow, high risk, right? Just in case there's another COVID, it could sit completely empty. And then on the other side, we have affordable housing, long-term rentals, government subsidized rent, or at least rents that are in the affordable housing range, so that if you put that great product out there, there will be people that will rent out that home. So I think these are all the different ways that people need to think about. Hey, don't just go all in on Airbnbs. If you want to be able to sleep at night, you probably want to have a little bit of diversification in your portfolio. That's just common sense. But I know sometimes we are looking for the easy button. We want to get rich quick. It's just a common mentality that we see nowadays. But it's important that we fight against that.
So let's go back to the time machine. So during the COVID, when the businesses were all hurt, they closed, they couldn't operate. Airbnb was laying off people massively, and couldn't go out. Nobody would run the Airbnb. How did you think I could jump into that springboard? Actually, this far. So now a different landscape, but back then it was a different world.
Honestly, I think it was in a position of, I knew that corporate America, at least in that profession, was not for me to stay in forever. Was I doing cool stuff? Yeah. But was I making the impact I really wanted to make? It didn't. So your mission has to propel you past all the fears. So during COVID, I still looked for markets that were still being booked out. And Arizona was one of the states that I think they opened up a little bit earlier. And when I looked at the data, things were still getting booked. Then if I were to kind of start from the beginning, and any of your listeners can always go on my YouTube channel at Kent_HE, and they could watch my underwriting video. However, I went about it and looked at, hey, where's the rental demand? Is the rental demand still there? And my criteria was always making sure it's 60 or higher, because when I bought my home in Scottsdale, it was about 66, 68. Then I looked for, hey, is it legal to do so? Yes, it was. Third step was, where are my top performers in that market? And using a resource called pricelabs.co, that's what I used. I was able to export the top 200 3 to 5 bedroom properties in Scottsdale. And if your listeners today just simply follow that model and export it, click through every single listing, you're going to start seeing trends that, hey, maybe all of the properties in Scottsdale that are high performance, they all have pools. So never in the world would you ever buy a property without a pool. It just doesn't make sense, right? That's like a quick thing you can run out. Then if you are able to click into the listing, meaning you go in the Airbnb listing, you click on the word reviews, like if it's 50 reviews, 10 reviews, whatever, you can type in keyword searches. You can type in the word family, you can type in the word bachelorette, you can type in bachelor, girls trip, or the word location. That's how you figure out, hey, where do I need to buy that allows me to purchase a home in an area where I know it's desirable, but then the cash flow will still make sense. That's how I determine within Scottsdale, for the bachelorette niche, you really have to be within a 7 to 10 minute Uber ride of Old Town, which is where all of the nightlife is. Now, I think I saw a question from Anna, or Anna. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. That is how you find the gaps, because when I looked at the property, the market for Scottsdale, Arizona, I saw that 40% of the reviews for Scottsdale, for the top 200 listings, had the word bachelorette or girls trip in it, versus family for about 60%. So it's no longer just a niche, right? It's 40% of all the reviews for the top 200 properties. That's a significant driver. And then you got to figure out, hey, how many actual bachelorette listings are there in that market? That's one way you quickly figure it out. Another way you figure out is we look and use a 20% rule. And I first heard this on a podcast, so I'm not making it up. It's not my rule of thumb. But if you see a home that has annual gross revenue of about $100,000, you don't want to pay for a home that's 5x that, which means you don't want to pay more than $500,000 or more for that property. Mm-hmm. Why? Because after doing this analysis so many times, and you're going to see this on my YouTube channel where I prove that out with a case study, that is usually where I'm going for a minimum of 10% cash on cash return, because for taking that amount of risk on a short-term rental, all the money you're spending furnishing it, it's just not worth it. You can't even get at least 10%, because you can probably get 10% pretty easily as a passive lender, as a private money lender, and with way less risk. Not that there's zero risk, but way less work as well on that front. So that's how you would look for those gaps or opportunities, because if you go even deeper, you can start writing down the location of the neighborhoods that those properties are in. And now guess what you will have, right? If you counted up and laid out the top 200 listings for all the neighborhoods, and then you have how many times the word location was mentioned, now you have a really good, strong correlation, because the word location is generally has a positive connotation with it. People will say, this was a great location. This was a good location, awesome location, super close location, whatever it is, it's generally positive. So now you don't have to be afraid of investing out of state in another market if you're able to get this data where you're like, okay, in this neighborhood, these homes are making 100 grand. People love the location according to these reviews, and all my homes are at least 500 grand or less. Boom. Now you found your market. That's it. It's super, super simple, but no one ever breaks it down that way. And I've seen some of the top performing YouTube gurus about short-term rentals, and no one goes into that level of detail. Maybe they do, but they're holding it back because they don't want other people to know. I'm just giving it all away because I hope everybody makes a lot of money. But most importantly, I hope you guys don't lose money, because that is probably the worst case scenario. And I would hate for that to happen. Sometimes we get really excited about doing a deal just to do a deal. We see people post on Facebook all the time about, hey, I just closed a deal. Yeah, but is it really going to make money? And when I see how they analyze it, that's so scary, Angela. I'm just, that's why I really want to do this. And this is why I'm sharing all the secrets. I'm literally sharing everything that I do. There's nothing I'm holding back for your audience today.
Yeah. I actually definitely, I'm the testimony. We analyzed a few deals together, and the numbers on my end looks. I said, oh, looks pretty good. Then you really went to deep dive, and it really, after you uncover all these the more the specific numbers, and then we realize actually those are the deals would not be able to cash flow.
Yeah. And I think one thing we learned within the creative finance community is sometimes it's not about what the purchase price is, what you can do with the property, right? I think you just got to be really, really careful about whether or not you want to have partners in these deals. Because if you're holding this property forever and you really want to be a short-term rental forever, then maybe you can afford a larger purchase price that doesn't meet that 20% rule. But if you have a partner and you think you're eventually going to sell it, just imagine there's no more appreciation and you overpaid for that property. Even though it might make some money, you're severely limiting your exit strategies for your property because you overpaid for that property. And we are not the only ones using that 20% rule of thumb to make our investment decisions. So you might be severely limiting your cap, especially if you're in an area that isn't filled with a lot of primary home buyers, especially if you are in a primary vacation rental market there.
Yeah. Airbnb has been keep changing their algorithm. So especially this year, the change is so significant. So I know a lot of people who had profitable Airbnbs, but they have to offload them because the algorithm put them all the way to the bottom. So back then, how did you decide to use the Bachelorette as a theme? Because now when you have this theme, you kind of basically prove yourself from any of these algorithm trick, because you will always stay on the top of the list. So
yeah, I think we stay on top of the list for any of the girls trips, right? But there are going to be a few tactics that I would recommend your audience member uses, right? And I'm going to be super honest. When I launched my first Airbnb, we had about $100,000 in bookings in about 4 weeks. Crazy amount. Our second Airbnb, when we launched it in May of 2022, so just about a year ago. And we only had one booking for the first 3 months. That's it. Very, very low, right? But that's what seasonality can do for you guys, and it could tremendously hurt you. And that's why I always would recommend for you to have at least 6 months of reserves for your property. And when you are launching towards the end of peak season or during slow season, the volume of searches is going to be very low. So what did we do, right? We got right down to work. We kept testing using a tool called RankBreeze, RankBreeze.com. We did a couple of things with it. The first thing we did was we constantly checked the cover photo. So which cover photo got us the most impressions, most views, most click-throughs, so that I actually know which picture was stopping people scroll. Just like if you were scrolling through Instagram, eventually you stop on something for some reason, right? Maybe it's the color of the listing or whatever. I learned this trick from another podcast I heard where you might have seen that the Disney princesses, their dresses are usually very high contrasting colors on the opposite end of the color wheel. That's how we picked our color palette. We said, what is going to stop the scroll? Because that's the most important part. If you just have another cookie cutter Airbnb that's just like all gray, someone's probably just going to scroll through it. So cover photo is going to be really important, and you can use a tracking tool in RankBreeze to see, hey, I use this cover photo for about 2 weeks. Did my rankings go up and down? If it went down, change it to another listing. And even if it went up, maybe there's another cover photo that gives you a very even higher ranking. You have to test it out. The second thing you do is you should change the listing title. You should be thinking about, hey, do I put in the word girls trip? Do I put in the word bachelorette trip? Do I say family trip? Do I say a hot tub? Do I say heated pool? Heated pool might give you more clicks during a winter season because people are looking for that specific amenity. What I would never do is put in the word like 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom. You see this a lot of times. You should never put something that's an easy filter, like a bedroom count and a bathroom count, on your listing title. You're just wasting space, and that's very, very precious marketing real estate for your listing title. I would never do that. If I can just call out to my guest avatar and why this listing is for them or who is this listing for, I would do that. And again, you can use a RankBreeze tool to track your progress over time to see what has actually gotten you a thing. Another thing I do is I actually go on, there's a lot of short-term rental Facebook groups out there. You can trade favorites, which means these are wish lists. So like, hey, I'll favorite your listing, you favorite my listing. And we just did this over time. We did about 10 or 20 every single week. And now our second Airbnb was, we started on page 13 with 0 wish list. We are at about 2,500 wish lists now. And we got it to like from page 13 to page 2. And then we started booking out. Okay, so this is the hard work that you have to put in. And I'm sharing this with everybody because everybody likes to say, hey, I don't have money. If you're able to take my process and share with people how you analyze deals and you recognize this deal, and then you also show that, hey, this is all the steps I'm going to do to make the property outperform everybody else because I'm in this game to win. I'm playing to win. I want to be the top 5%. That's how you stand out, and that's how you make people want to invest with you because I have shown like, hey, I didn't come out firing, like running out of the gates, like on fire on my second Airbnb, but this is what I did to get it to perform. And last month we cashed with $4,000 and my investors are super, super happy. Even though it wasn't like outperforming like my first property, I kept them updated. I communicated with them like, hey, this is what I'm doing this week. This is what I'm doing this week. Hey, we haven't hit the numbers that we wanted to project towards. This is what I'm also doing. I started teaming out with other distribution sources. So you talked about Airbnb, changing the algorithm. So it's very important for your group and your audience members to find a different distribution source. Sometimes people do direct bookings. We partner with local bachelorette decorating services because they are our warmest leads, right? They are the people that are getting an advertising on social media. Like the partner we partner with, Scottsdale Bachelorette, they have about 80,000 unique visitors to their website every single year. Those are your primary leads. That's who you should be partnering with. I shouldn't be trying to create a direct booking website. I got to make their life easier and say, hey, put me on your preferred Airbnb list. So now I have a different way of someone that says, hey, when they type in Scottsdale Bachelorette, they show up on Google and then they click through their places and we're on their preferred places to stay. And on top of that, we also get 10% of whatever they sell decorating packages to their guests. So we just send an automated message every single time they sell a decorating service for about $900 or $1,000. We get like $90 to $100 just for sending an automated message. Another revenue stream, right? So yeah, that's what I know it went on very long, but I think it's very important for you guys to understand there's so much in your control, even though it's easier to blame Airbnb.
Yeah. Tigger just pretty creepily just said the Airbnb seems like a pain to consider. And a lot of people right now try to offload Airbnb because the algorithm change the competitiveness. It's get harder and harder to operate. But you have operated a very different niche, so you have a lot less competition. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Jordan has this good question. That's actually Jordan read my mind. I was that's the next question I want to ask you. It's come to automation because there's so much work to do. It become a business. So how did you manage your Airbnb business? By yourself?
Yeah, great question, Jordan. I did manage the Airbnb properties myself. I would say the brunt of your work is going to be upfront. So when I first started setting up our Airbnb, I was probably working an additional maybe 3 to 4 hours every single day. So you think about your normal 9 to 5, you add another 3 to 4 hours into it, but that's what it takes. And I think you honestly need to go through it one time yourself to figure out, hey, what part of this process do I like? Not only do you have to have meetings with your designers, you have to, after you get your designer to give you all the list of furnishings and having those partnership meetings, like, hey, do we agree? Are we okay with the design? Then I have to order everything. You have to coordinate a handyman to receive those properties. And don't forget what the most painful part is going to be is actually returns, because you think you're going to order everything and everything's going to arrive like perfectly fine. It has never happened, and it will never happen. And trying to coordinate returns for these things are going to be super, super painful. Then afterwards, you got to set up all the automations, right? So you got to set up your pricing updates with pricelabs.co. I set up my cleaner calendar so that it's automatically integrate with my property management system, which is called Hospitable, that automates most of my messages, and I create some canned messages. But honestly, after you set it up, I've only been spending about 2 to 3 hours a week on my properties. It's really not that bad because you have the systems in place to check it now, right? Where after my cleaner cleans the property, they take a photo of every single bedroom, so I know exactly how every bed is made. Do they take pictures of all my toilets and all my bathtubs to make sure like there's no hair in there? And then on top of that, I have a supervisor that comes in on a day of check-in to take more photos. They look under the bed, make sure there's no dust underneath the bed. They try to make sure, hey, was there anything missed by the cleaner? And I pay a premium. I pay about $369 per clean for my property. That's 2,500 square feet. But every single time I get a 5-star review, I give them a $20 bonus to the cleaner and a $10 bonus to the supervisor who checks on the work. That's how I make everybody win. And I think that's primarily the reason why we have all 5-star reviews on both of our listings right now. We have 62 5-star reviews and 36 5-star reviews on the other listing. All 5 stars, all 5.0. And if you think about how you can best protect your investors' capital, you should always have a conversation with your investors first about, are you philosophically aligned on the same page about how you make decisions? Because I treat everyone like they're coming to stay at like a Ritz-Carlton, like the luxury of luxury. When someone complains, they just want some money back. So just give it to them. Don't try to nickel and dime them like, oh, I don't want to give you $50 for this or whatever. Or, hey, we noticed a cup that was missing. That's just a normal cost of business. If you think about what's more important is you need to protect your pricing power, and that comes from those 5-star reviews. And I think that's what's going to protect your capital, because that gives you tremendous pricing power into the future. A 5.0 property is always going to outperform a 4.5 or 4.6 or 4.7 property. So that's just something I would kind of recommend. And how did you balance it? You just got to want it.
And I want to add to this for people in the audience here. So you actually live in San Diego. Your properties are in Scotland, Scottsdale, Arizona. So everything is remote for you.
Yeah, everything was remote. I only went to my Scottsdale property once during the inspection when I went there to build up my team. So I found my cleaner, found my plumbers, electricians, landscaper, pool guy all on that trip. And then I went there one more time the day before the photos were taken because my baby was just born. I had to be in and out. I worked all night. I didn't sleep, but I got the place ready. Everything was staged. I had nice little cocktails with the bar card outside and everything, and that's what it takes. And I go back to the day, I think I've heard this advice from people. I think maybe it was Ed Milan said it. It's like, what are you going to tell your kid? Like you didn't do it because it was hard. Like, how can you tell your kid that they can do anything that they want to do if you weren't willing to do it yourself? And I think that's what I always think to myself is like, hey, if I'm spending time away from my daughter, it better be worth it. I better shake as many hands as possible at this conference. I better meet as many people and make as many friends and provide as much value as possible, because that's what I owe it to my daughter.
Yeah.
So
I also want to know how you balanced your Airbnb or this obligation with your W-2 job.
Yeah, you just you just do it. You gotta find time. I mean, were there times where during the day I get a message here and there? Yeah, probably. But I think once during the first 4 weeks, as an example, when I launched my first property, it was it was very hectic, but then it was also the holidays. So during the December vacation, like Christmas period time, that's when a lot of bookings kind of came in. So that wasn't that bad. But as bookings come in, you just figure out like, hey, how to automate this, how to respond to this. And eventually I hired a virtual assistant to figure out like, hey, whenever someone books something, they always help me screen them. They always make sure I ask those questions of, I always ask them, hey, what do you have planned? What do you have planned for the trip? What are you doing at the home? What are you doing outside the home? Sometimes people will say like, hey, can I bring entertainment like strippers to the home? And I say, oh, no, we're probably not the right fit or whatever, right? But these are the things that people are willing to offer to you, but you have to set those boundaries so that you don't get in trouble with your neighbors, because we try to be overly respectful neighbors out there first and foremost. And when you are able to elevate your standards of guests, that actually gives you more freedom of time. So one time the police was called to our Airbnb for noise violations. And after that, I started putting in a no music outdoors policy. We had 30% of the bookings actually get canceled. However, they all got booked up back afterwards. And it was so cool because you're like, oh, I can increase my standards and also have less headaches because these people are super respectful and they're completely okay with no blasting music outdoors. Awesome. So that's how you combat it. It's like you gotta do a really good job of screening so that you don't lose your mind on the weekends when every little problem kind of come up. You can kind of tell sometimes folks might just be asking a lot of very knick-knacky questions and maybe they're not the best fit. Like, are there going to be days where you get issues and you got to drop your entire Saturday around? Yeah, that's happened to me like a few times, but that's just the nature of the business. And there's no way I wasn't going to respond to those issues because it's my investors' capital at risk. Like they gave me hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000, like for the most recent property. I better take care of that money. There's no excuses. And I think if you are not willing to take that same amount of urgency, you should not get into short-term rentals because it is a quote unquote 24/7 job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's Michael asked this question. How do you combat short-term rental beat fatigue? So I know you recently, finally, you are able to quit your job because you get to the financial ability to do so. But there's still some fatigue involved. So yeah, maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, Michael, I want to make sure I understand your question. If you could clarify that question, I want to make sure I'm answering your question properly. If you were talking about people don't like the service fees or people don't like, how would I say it? People don't like the cleaning fee. I think I've never had anyone complain about cleanings because they have always walked in their home and they have always said, wow. Like I have a Ring doorbell camera and I see people when they come in, they're like, oh my God, this is so cute. So the level of, it's kind of like, hey, you never complain about an iPhone, right? You're like, oh, this phone was $1,000. No one ever says like, oh, this phone is so expensive. Everybody's either loves it or they don't because they're willing to pay that certain amount of price for that property. And I think being at a higher price point for average nightly rates actually works in our favor because you're working with people that are expecting a premium. They are expecting a weekend of their lives. Then everything you have done is to make their lives a lot easier. So another thing we do is like you have to overwhelm them with value. And one of the ways we do it is always like, hey, here's all the recommendations. Think about your bachelorette trips. When they are usually on these trips, there are about 10 or 12 ladies all at once. There's not that many restaurants that will take a reservation for 10 to 12 people all at once. So you only give them places with reservations that can accommodate those large groups, right? It's just you give them so much value that they forget that, oh, this wasn't worth it. Every group has left our home saying, thank you so much for one of the best weekends of our lives. We will cherish these memories forever. And that overwhelms any fees because if you think about it, even you take like $1,000 average nightly rate, which is what we do, you divide that by 12 people, it's still less than $100 a person. But then they get a super premium mattress. Like people message us all the time afterwards about, hey, where did you get the pillows from? I'm trying to get it for my fiance or my husband. Like that's how over delivering we are with our properties. So
Yeah.
I don't really see that fatigue, but I think if you're dealing with different price point, you might get those
Right.
types of objections.
Yeah, I do remember all the feature you provide to your guest. So yeah, there are fees on the website, but you also bring all these actual values, all the all these affiliate program you set up with. So the
Mm-hmm.
recommendation of where they go, what they can eat, what places they can visit, what all these venue they can go to have a good time. So these are the
Mm-hmm.
things bring them a good memory, and then the high fee for them is become insignificant.
That's so right, Angela. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Another thing we do is if you guys are running short-term rentals, everyone will always ask for an early check-in and late checkout. Everyone. This is very common hospitality. Thankfully, um, in our market for bachelorette groups, typically the bookings are Thursday through Sunday. So whenever we ask them, like, hey, tell us a little bit more about your group, where do you all work, the general industries, like usually there's always one group in there that is a social worker, that is a nurse, that is whatever. And I always tell them, hey, look, I used to be an EMT. So first and foremost, thank you for your service. The second thing I do is, well, hey, I want to offer you the ability to block off the prior night on a Wednesday for $300. And for me, that would have been an empty Wednesday most of the time, right? But I also want to give them a deal because they already spent $1,000 on the other nights. So they are always appreciative that they got a deal, and that will always lower the amount of cancellations because you, unlike other Airbnb hosts, want to charge more for early check-ins. I just say, hey, let me block off the entire night. And then on top of that, it's usually cheaper to fly in on a Wednesday. So that's another way we give another value to folks so that it makes them a little bit more sticky of a customer. But sincerely, it's also really, hey, I want to thank them. But in a group of 10, 12 ladies, there's always someone in civil service, public education, law enforcement, first responders, nurses, etc. So it's really easy to just like thank them from their service. And it has always made them appreciate that they are appreciated from that perspective.
Yeah, in that regard, you always provide so much value to everybody around you. Every time I call you up to ask you a question, you are just available right at the moment, even though you have family and kids. So, Jordan have this question back to your the music policy you have. So he asked, why not just limit the outdoor music to a certain time, such as 10 p.m. So I guess the question is, how do you modify all the different policies so you can protect yourself and also still attract all these visitors?
Great question, Jordan. That's because the police got called to my home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That is wild, right? That's a little unreasonable if you think about it. However, what are you going to do? You will always be in a losing battle if you fight your neighbors. They can make your life really difficult. They can scream at your gas. I know another friend who opened a short-term rental in Scottsdale, and they have a gentleman that screams at their gas every night when they get out of the taxi at midnight, right? That's what a living nightmare can be if you are not nice to your neighbor. So for me, I want to be an overly respectful neighbor. I went to every single neighbor and I said, hey, I'm the short-term rental owner here next door. Uh, I want to be an overly respectful neighbor first and foremost. If you ever get any sort of issues, please call me first. Don't call the police. Like, I want to resolve the issue with you and first and foremost. And on top of that, I also gave them like, hey, this is my listing. This is where it says I don't allow music outdoors. And they have all appreciated that so much. They're like, hey, no one has ever come to our home. And they're like, yeah, your house, we don't have any problems with. Like the 3 to 5 doors, like 3 to 5 houses down the street, we call the cops on them all the time. That's what you are trying to do. You're trying to win them over and show that you're overly respectful neighbor, because chances are if those people are getting called the cops, like they're probably gonna be out of business in like 2 to 3 years because of all the bad reviews that they might get. So something for you to keep in mind. And if you want to be a little bit more lenient on our second home, we do allow music outdoors. We just say, hey, no Bluetooth speakers outside. We just say, hey, you can play through your phone because that's plenty loud enough. And I think if you are able to limit the amount of noise, chances are, even if police were to get called to the home, they are probably going to be a little bit more reasonable and lenient. But like, hey, they weren't like blasting. They didn't have a DJ outside and have Bluetooth speakers and everything. So it's your management style at the end of the day. And it's for you to figure out. I think usually when we do this, we are usually operating from a state of fear. Like, hey, what if I limit outdoor to, what if I say no music outdoors? What if everybody cancels? I had the same fear. I kid you not, I had the same fear, but it worked out for us. I'm not saying this will work in every single market.
And the lesson I take from here is when you set up Airbnb, not just think about how you maximize your booking, your profit from the guests you going to get, but also consider the neighbors who people live around it because they will also make your life easy or hard. So at least come to the service mindset, always service the people you direct have business with and the people around your business.
That's right. Let's see. I think Tigger had a question on how long it took from design stage to open. Did it get to go online? So we closed our first property in August, and we got the property up and running by middle of November. So I like to just call it 3 months, on pretty much from closing on a property, getting design phase up. I think the fastest I've really seen properties get stood up is probably about 2 months. You got to make sure you think about the supply constraints that were out there when you were ordering stuff. Like, I literally had my designer give me some furnitures, and then when I was about to order them like 3 or 5 days later, it was sold out. So something that you got to keep in mind. And the earlier you're able to do the market research, and that's why I go back to using the data again, right? You can look at RankBreeze, you can look into the future and say, hey, for this market, here are my top performing properties. And of these top performing properties, here are all the properties that are being booked out like 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance, because that's going to give you a really good clue that that is the theme and decor you want to go afterwards. Don't base it off of your emotions. Don't base it off of your partner's decisions or your significant other's opinions. You base it off of the data and you say, hey, Mr. or Miss Designer, here is a listing that is being booked out well into the future. So it might be bohemian vibe, it might be a modern vibe. Doesn't matter what it is. You say, can you please replicate this, but beat it? Make it better in terms of some more amenities, make it better in terms of some sort of design. And that's how you design. And if you're able to do that work up front and communicate those expectations clearly, a lot of times people are like, oh, I just want like a really girly theme. Oh, I think I just want a more modern theme. You don't give specifics. That actually doesn't help your designer. But you can't expect your designer to know the data or what a high performer is. You have to be the expert there. It's your investment. You can't blame the designer. You have to do the research and say, this is a high performer. Help me beat this property. And that's where you can probably cut down the timing. But you still have to find your contractors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was blown away by the design. The first time you showed me on the picture, and I couldn't believe it. And then when I saw it with my own eyes, I totally understand how you become so successful. It's really shows the work there. Really shows that there's no way you cannot make money with your Airbnb.
Yeah. Let's see. What other questions do we have?
So there's Jordan asked, how long did that take you from purchase your property until you quit your job?
Oh, good question. We closed in August 2021, and I quit my job in June 2022. So just about 10 months ish, around there. But from after I launched my first property, after I saw that as 100,000 bookings, I just started sharing that with friends and family. And eventually I got another set of partners that said, hey, we're interested. Let's do this. So I got another property and closed another one in February of 2022. And we launched that in May. And I'm so thankful for my wife, because I said, hey, don't you want to wait until we get the second property up and running? And she's like, well, there's never going to be a good time to leave. So you must do it now, because right in April of 2022, that's when we got our property that we bought for 800 grand using, I think there was another question about financing. We use conventional investment loans using our tax returns and our W-2 statements and check and pay stubs to qualify for those loans. We put in $126,000 to renovate that property that we bought for 800 grand, 126 cash. I was cash out of pocket. And we got it reappraised at 1.15 million. So that's how we were able to force $350,000 of equity into the property. That was the day that my friend and I, we've been friends since 8th grade. We both came from low income housing. And that was the day we both became millionaires. So that was super, super cool. Like, just two guys, friends since 8th grade, and coming from low income housing. It was a really, really cool moment. I didn't drink at all during COVID, but we said, hey, let's have a drink tonight. We just FaceTime each other. It was still during COVID. We weren't traveling. So that was really, really fun. So yeah, 10 months.
So yeah, it's impressive. The first 4 weeks since you opened your first Airbnb, the growth was 100,000. But
Yeah.
still, Airbnb has a seasonality. How do you feel you're comfortable, or it's a good thing? It's a secure decision to decide to quit your job and then go to do the Airbnb full time.
So I did not have the confidence until my entire summer for my first property was actually booked out for the summer. So even though summer is a slow season in Scottsdale, because we're still niching down, and there's no data behind this, but I'm assuming people were still getting married, so they still had to have the bachelorette trips, so they were still having the girls trips in Scottsdale, and we were still booked every single weekend when you were in these Facebook groups I think there's this Facebook group called Arizona short-term rental, whatever group. And people were just complaining about how slow it was. And I said, wow, I don't have that problem. So that's why you got to be really cautious about the information you let into your brain. Because if you only read that free Facebook group, you probably would never, ever invest in Scottsdale because there's so much negativity. The people that are doing great, they're probably not on those Facebook groups complaining, right? You think about it.
Right.
So just make sure you think through that stuff. And that's a great question about seasonality. We learned about seasonality the hard way for our second property. But again, like we said earlier, it's not about how well you do. It's about what do you do when it's not going well. And I think that's what's going to separate you from other investors, because I would say a lot of people got lucky over the last like 2 or 3 years. Like probably every flip made money, but I want to see who's still making money now, because those are the only people I really want to partner with, because there's probably going to be so many people that lost their money. And for me, whenever I partner with anybody, I always ask them like, hey, what are you not telling me? And I never want to be caught like saying like, oh, I didn't tell you this or hiding any of this, because I want all my investors that are investing with me right now to tell great stories about working with me. Not the great stories when it's going well. I want them to tell the stories when it was not going well and what did I do. That's way, way more important as a person.
Wow. I'm glad I'm talking to you right now, because my strategy mainly is flip. So right now I have 4 flips going on, and then even with this market shift, so I'm still making a pretty good money.
I love it. I can tell you why I'm on the show, because I know you're making money, Angela.
So for me, yes, every time I do some project, I like all these high and lows. Because during the low time, actually, that's the time I learned a lesson. And lessons are priceless, absolutely. So I have this long question here. So, what challenges do you encounter when it comes to customer preference, feedback, satisfactions, and how did you leverage this information to enhance your guest experience?
Oh yeah, these are good. So let's see, customer preference and feedback. What was the one thing people requested most about? Toasters.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, hey, do you have a toaster in the place? I purposely did not leave a toaster in my property because, well, I have an oven anyway, so they can technically toast something with a sheet pan. But I knew that toasters would probably want to be the grossest thing to keep clean, because you guys know, like, all the crumbs kind of fall into the toasters. And I would never put anything in my Airbnb that I can't consistently keep clean. And that's okay, because guess what? Everybody is going to not be happy with everything at your property. It's just the nature of the business.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to listen to every single thing, because you got to think about, well, if I put in a toaster, that means I have to spend an extra 10 minutes every single week to make sure, like, telling my cleaner, hey, please take a picture of the toaster. I want to make sure it's clean. And if they don't take the picture of the toaster, it's like, hey, do I go tell them to come back and whatever? You have to pick and choose your fights with your cleaners. Like, there's going to be some mandatory stuff like, hey, I want you to lint row my pillows and sheets all the time, because sometimes a piece of hair might fall down. Like, I kid you not, there was one time where a cleaner, like, one woman found like a piece of hair, and she's like, oh, I found a couple of pieces of hair. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, even though this stuff happens, one piece of hair means the entire place is dirty, because when people see one piece of hair, they start nitpicking at every single thing. So the only thing I did there was, hey, I'm so sorry. This was like, I got this message at 2 a.m. in the morning. I kid you not. 2 a.m. in the morning, she's like, hey, I'm really unsatisfied. We only found one bed that we're happy with. So all three of us had to share one bed tonight before everybody came in. So I said, I'm so sorry. I texted the cleaner right away. I was like, hey, I'm going to send the cleaner in the morning. They're going to change out every single sheet in the entire Airbnb. Here's $500 back to apologize. And then here's also some money to buy you guys coffee, lunch, or whatever. Did I lose like money? Probably.
Yeah.
But they paid like $1,000 a night. They expect perfection. You don't argue that stuff. You just say, "Hey, I'm so sorry," and she still gave me a 5-star review afterwards.
Mhm.
But I had to wake up in the middle of the night, and you have to answer these calls because people want to be heard. I think if you just remember that one takeaway, people want to be heard,
Yeah.
and it's not about you winning; it's about making them feel heard. And I think
Yes.
that's what you really need to learn about the hospitality experience. Like, did I do other stuff? Like just giving them more recommendations. Eventually, you figure out like people ask the same questions all the time, like, "Oh, how far are you from O Town? Oh, where can I get brunch? Where do they take reservations?" So nowadays, when they book, I just send them all these recommendations already because I ask them like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And it's like, "Hey, this is where you go for the spa for the bachelorette package. This is where you go for a day club if you want to go there. If you want a really easy hike, this is the one is the easiest one, and it's still a great group photo. If you want to do harder ones, here's that one." And if you want cheap delivery for Uber Eats because no one wants to go on, everyone just wants to stay home, here you go. If you want to hire a private chef, there you go. And then you just figure out like, oh, okay, this was pretty easy. You just keep shooting the same recommendations for folks, and they're just so appreciative of it.
Yeah. Wow. Now I learned all these little things you do for a reason. So, when you showed your layout of your Airbnb, I didn't pay attention to the toaster. Now I'm gonna see every little small item. There must be a reason behind
Let's
it.
see. What
So
other
they
questions?
asked, Alex asked, how did you look for the properties yourself? Or did you have an agent looking at the property for you? I know you have VAs, but go ahead. The audience want to know the details. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you should only work with agents who own short-term rentals themselves because that is probably the best way for you to figure out. And they got to be high performers. It can't be a agent that just has like a cookie cutter Airbnb. You should only work with winners and only people that are playing to win. And I think that's how you get the best clue. Like if my agent never sent me a screenshot for her bookings, I would have never bought my property, to be honest with you. So you got to look at what's successful. You can do as much stuff about the data, but if you're in the mountain market, like I'll tell you another market I'm looking at. It's Asheville, North Carolina. Again, I'm telling you guys all these markets I'm looking at. I'm not holding anything back. There's plenty for everybody. So I'm looking at Asheville, North Carolina. But then you got to understand, like certain properties, they have septic tanks. And in certain properties, they have community or restrictions against short-term rentals that, hey, at a snap of a finger, they could interpret this ordinance as something different and take away your ability to short-term rent. That's why you really got to have some local representations. That's why I don't normally like working with just simply wholesalers in vacation rental markets because they might not know certain little tidbits about that market that is so crucial to the success of your property. So that's why I'm just always a little wary about just buying anything if I don't have like an agent working with me.
Yeah. So actually, I can comment on that. Atlanta recently they changed the Airbnb rule. So a lot of people
Mm,
who have Airbnb there now they have to think about the other strategies, but they are not. When they did their underwriting, they were not prepared for other strategies. So now they are in a little bit financial problem right now. So Jordan just made the joke. So Angela can flip the property, sell the land, and then the Jordan will invest with both of us. So thank you, Jordan. And also, I also want to comment on real estate is a team sport. So to be successful, actually, the best thing to be successful soon, faster, and quicker is actually indeed partner up with other people so that
yeah.
get a lot of back out of the back. Yeah.
No, seriously, I think people ask me this question all the time. They're like, "Hey, how did you structure your partnership?" Everyone's looking for like, "How did you structure it?" At the end of the day, it's about what makes everybody happy. Because if you enter that relationship unhappy with what you guys are doing, then why would it ever even like result in anything good? So I'll give you guys a really good representation. So for my second property, when I was still proving out, I had an investor. They put in $200,000. Friends with me since 8th grade. They took the loan out under their name. I put in $50,000 of my own money. How do I make it fair for them? I said, hey, I'm only charging you a 10% management fee when the industry usually charges between 15 to 25%. I'm charging less so that you guys can make more money. So that's the first benefit I'm giving them. Second benefit is like, hey, I'm doing all the work. I'm setting up the arbitrage. I mean, setting up the properties like furnishings and stuff like that. and working with designers, working with other contractors to renovate. I'm basically GCing the project for them. I didn't realize that was kind of role I was playing. I was like, oh, that's all GC is. Okay, interesting. So what I said is, hey, because the total investment was $250,000 cash, the first $75,000 of cash that would have went to me goes back to them first. So we catch back up to $125,000 each. And that's how I make it fair for them because they put in all the money. I don't expect to make any money on this property for about at least like a year or two because I'm only going to be making money on the management fee. That's okay because I'm in this for the long game, right? And I think that's why for all you folks, like, don't be in such a rush to leave your W-2 job. If you really want to leave W-2 job, maybe you get a W-2 job in real estate somehow. Like maybe it's like working for a commercial broker, doing underwriting or something like that. But if you are able to not appear greedy and are willing to give a super fair deal to your investors so that they can rave about you, that will allow you to have a much longer term thinking so that you don't appear greedy because we're in this for the long game. It's about, I think billionaires are only billionaires because they have made other people more than billions.
Exactly.
Same concept here. If you keep thinking about what's in it for yourself, you're in it for the wrong reason. And I think that's why if you are just leaving your job, like, let me go become a wholesaler, I think you are going to be putting yourself in a financial stressfully position where you're like, I'm always chasing the next check. So you're always thinking about, hey, what do I need from me? What do I need from me? Versus if you have the financial stability, you can make much more well-informed decisions that are going to benefit you on the long term and in turn give you a better reputation so that you can really scale and exponentially scale at some point in time. So I think that's one question I get from a lot of folks. But in terms of partnerships, like I've been offering people now, it's like, hey, we'll give you 15%, we'll give you 25%, we'll give you 50%, depending on the scope of work. I've literally had people offer like, hey, we'll give you 25% of the deal if all you do is just analyze the deals for us and tell us which markets to buy and what the buy box is. And you don't have to do any other work except for proving out like this is the scenario and this is our buy box for this property. I'm like, oh, cool. I'll do that. But then my gift back to them is like, well, I won't take any money out from the cash flow until I cash back up to 25%. That's how you make it fair, right? I didn't put in any money. I'm doing the work up front, but I'm not going to be paid on that property until we exit like 5 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it's all about what makes you happy. And I have realized that my goal and passion is affordable housing. So I need to leverage the skill sets that I developed here on the underwriting part, on the data analytical piece, just to help other people. And if I'm not greedy, I think I would feel like I would naturally attract more people to my tribe. And my goal is just to help them make a lot of money so that they invest in affordable housing with me one day.
Yeah, you definitely attract a lot of people. So in the community where you both are in, there are so many people just constantly talk about how helpful you are to everybody. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's so cool.
It's in addition to what you still do with your Airbnb, and your help is so timely. Sometimes it amazes me how you can just manage all the requests.
Well, my parents are leaving. I don't have babysitting help for the next 2 months, so I'll be a little bit slower on responding. But my goal is always to get babysitting help like as soon as possible and as much as possible because it allows me to help a lot more other people. And I think that's going to be such a good example for me to share with my daughter. It's like, hey, look at all the people we have helped. And I think that's going to be the best emotional income I can ever have. It's about how do people speak about you after you're gone. And I've literally thought about like, hey, on the day I die, how am I going to feel at peace? Mm-hmm. Did I help enough people that I know they will in turn pay it forward and eventually help my kids or grandkids or great grandkids who are not here anymore? That's my ultimate passion. I knew I left my EMT job because it didn't pay enough. Well, what if I solved that problem? What if I simply said, you know what, let me take the biggest expense out of the question for these folks so that they can do their loving profession, which is to help people. Like a person should not say, I can't stay as a social worker anymore because I don't get paid enough. Well, where are the people that's going to be helping people in the future? Like that's just a world that I cannot accept. And I would be really mad at myself if I didn't do anything about it. Just imagine you're able to flash forward to the future and you see that your family is struggling and you're like, what could I have done to prevent this or help someone that would have paid forward to it? And if I could have done something and I didn't do it, I can't live with myself. No way.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the last question. Tiger want to know: do you coach people?
I do not coach people, and I think I've been asked to manage other people's property. This was a shiny object syndrome, and I almost said yes, but I decided no because it's just not worth my time. To be honest with you, it's just not worth my time to pick up a property management position for somebody else because then I'll just be getting another job, right? My goal now is to raise hundreds of millions of dollars for affordable housing. That's my primary goal now. Like Tigger earlier, you could just watch my videos and you would know exactly what to do. To be honest with you, I don't. The reason I share all this stuff out with the world is because I want my free content to be better than everybody else's paid content. And if I can do that, I think my job would be complete. Because I bet I haven't told you something that probably won't beat your competition wherever you go.
Mhm.
I've shared everything that I think is the most crucial for you to implement. And if you just do it over time consistently, you will be successful.
And how do people get access to your free content? And by the way, your free content is amazing.
Oh, thanks. I mean, you could, so for underwriting, you guys can go to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/ at Kent underscore he. So at KENT underscore HE. I just posted a new video on there because I wanted to go out in conjunction with a Business Insider thing, but that really goes through that review from beginning to end. And I know you're going to have some questions in there. So just comment those questions on the YouTube video. I can do a subsequent video to go through all those questions and answer whatever you guys like. You guys can also DM me on Instagram at invest with Kent He. If you just DM me, then I will guarantee that I will get back to you at some point. I don't check Facebook Messenger very often, so don't Facebook Messenger me. It's very hard for me to communicate on all different platforms. So please just help me keep my communications consolidated on Instagram. It helps me filter out a lot more from that perspective.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So our show coming to an end pretty much soon. So I want to bring you, Jordan really said it. Building reputation is a long-term business. So and not just building reputation, also building strong team, building partnership, and really have people have a different skill set to when you assemble the team. That's actually really be able to really
Mm-hmm.
you know utilize everybody's strength and reduce the weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll share one more thing with all of you guys is why I'm so passionate about. Yes, that is right, Jordan. Why I'm so passionate about affordable housing, and you hear me talk about the story is. I'll tell you one more story. Are you okay if I take another minute,
Yeah, go
Angela?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my dad, he used to work in construction, and he was making like $10 a month. When he came to America, he came with America with $1,000 in his pocket. That's because one of his sisters helped give him money so that he can start in the U.S. My mom was making $3 an hour here in the U.S. when she first came over, and she tells me the story all the time of how one night before they got their affordable housing rental, they got burglarized. They lost $5,000 in one night. They had that $5,000 out there because they were getting ready to bring that home with them to China. And I'm not sure if you can imagine losing your entire year's worth of salary in one night through no fault of your own. Someone just climbed through the second floor window in the alleyway and climbed in and stole everything. That was like rock bottom for them because they didn't know English. They came over from China from a whole nother country. But you know what kept them going forward?
Hmm.
They had hope. And that
Yeah.
hope came from being on a wait list for affordable housing.
Yeah.
If they were never on that wait list, I don't know how they would have gotten through it. But that's what it teaches me in life. Like sometimes bad things, horrific things will happen, but it's about
Yeah.
how you respond to them. And that's why now I'm on a mission. And I hope some of your audience will join me in this mission is I'm trying to create the largest affordable housing investment community in the United States. I want to remove the fear from folks about, hey, is affordable housing just guns, drugs, and drama? It's not. It's just simple, hardworking people like my parents that just didn't know English, that just needs a strong launching pad so that they can pursue the American dream and put all the dreams and hopes into their kids to put them through college so that they can become amazing human beings. That's why I'm so passionate about this stuff because if I never had affordable housing, I would have never been in a position I am today. I would never be in this position to help you and give all this value to all of you guys today. And I just wanted to pay it forward And I'm so thankful for the time today, Angela. I can't thank you enough for giving me some time to talk about my story. I hope everybody resonated with. I'm just trying to give as much value as possible to you. And I think it's not about me. I just want you to understand my motivation and my drivers, because I really do believe in this affordable housing mission. You can decide whether or not you want to be a mom and pop, single mom and pop landlord, to learning how to do multifamily new construction from the ground up, or just be a private money lender. Doesn't matter. Everyone can get involved in the same way so that we get this wait list down. It was 7-year wait list when I was in affordable housing. It in San Diego is 12 to 15 years. And I don't know if you can imagine being like a single mom, you're pregnant, and someone you're trying to get out of a bad high crime area, and someone tells you 12 to 15 years. That is too late. That is unacceptable. And I'll be damned if I can't do something about it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for the time today, Angela. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. You are now you're on a mission. Even though you're financially independent, you don't have to rely on W-2 job. But now you are working even harder than when you had the W-2 job, because you are on a mission. You want to help so many people, and you will help the society. So really, really, we should be all thankful for your dedication to help on this affordable housing problem. So thank you so much, audience, for being here. Share your questions and really encourage each other. So our next for this Angela Wang show, I always try to bring people from real estate investors or business owners to share their stories and the lessons. So please subscribe my channel so you can get a notification when I have the next speaker coming up. And if you would like to be interviewed on this channel, you can always find my contact info in the channel description. So thank you so much. Have a good Memorial Day weekend. Happy with your family, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.